Corrections is up in smoke here in Florida about an officer using medical marijuana. Now, I am not a user of medical marijuana or CBD chemicals, but I'm not going to knock anyone that is using these products. I'm not a medical person. I don't know what type of problems people have that use CBD and medical marijuana. So I'm not going to knock them. We're going to talk about an officer that was just fired. Okay. He was a correctional officer, a former combat veteran. He tested positive on a random drug screen here in Florida Department of Corrections, which we need to do. I'm totally for random drug screens. Probably should do more. But when he tested positive, they fired him. He now has an attorney, and he's fighting for his rights. He says his constitutional rights have been violated. He's not a marijuana user other than prescription marijuana. And remember, he's a combat veteran as well and a corrections officer. So he has a double whammy when it comes to the possibility of post-traumatic stress disorder, sleepless nights, stress. We know that. Anybody that's been in corrections or the military or both, we all know how it goes. So, we're not going to judge anybody here. Now, the Department of Corrections, to be fair for them as well, they have a policy that absolutely says you will not use medical marijuana when you work for the Department of Corrections. Now, they have a right to have that in their policy. Okay, there's nothing that says they can't have that in their policy. So, the attorney for this officer stated the following, and I'm going to have to quote it off this paper to make sure I get it correct. The attorney representing the correctional officer, who was fired for testing positive and is a medical marijuana, has a prescription for medical marijuana. If you're on opiates in a drug-free workplace and you test positive, not under the influence, but you test positive, you're permitted to show a prescription from a doctor to show justification why you have it in your system. Now, we've seen that before. I've seen people test positive for something and they bring their prescription medication in from a doctor, and then they get it verified and say, okay, that's what made you test positive for that. Well, they're saying his prescription medical marijuana made him test positive, of course, for marijuana. We believe people in the state of Florida should have the same protection for medical marijuana. That's Attorney Minority, who represents the officer now. Now, it's just in its beginning stages of his fight for his job back, so we won't know for a while if he gets his job back or not. Now, people have gotten their jobs back, correctional officers and law enforcement officers, for the use of CBD, cannabinoid oils and CBD coffees and things like this. There was a farm bill of 2018 that passed to allow CBD to be legal. And by the way, Florida, it's prescription marijuana passed as well, or we wouldn't be talking about this. But just to let you know, and there's a very small amount, CBD has a very small amount of THC. It doesn't get you high. It has about 0.3%, THC, I guess. It depends on where you get it, who makes it, who produces it, I'm not a pharmacist or a chemist, but you get the picture. It's not to get you on a high. Now, they're saying that a lot of officers can benefit from CBD to help them get sleep, to help them when they're stressed, to help them with post-traumatic stress disorder. But an officer in Florida a while back tested positive and said it was from the CBD, and actually got the job back. Okay, got the job back as a correctional officer. There was a police road deputy in Lafayette, Louisiana. A police officer was fired for testing positive for marijuana, got his job back because he was using CBD to help him rest, to help him sleep, and he got his job back. Now, why are we talking about correctional officers and police officers using medical marijuana and CBD? Because it's going to be a big topic in the future. It's already a topic that's hit in many states and a lot of the news media. And it's going to continue to hit as more states make things more legal, like medical marijuana, make CBD more available. You're going to see more and more correctional officers and law enforcement officers fighting to keep their jobs when they test positive if they're users of this. Now, let me know your opinion. What do you think? I don't use any of these products. I don't use CBD, as I said earlier. I don't use marijuana or medical marijuana. I love coffee now. I'm going to be honest. I've thought about that CBD coffee. I've always wanted to give it a try. Maybe when I'm wild and crazy on a trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee or something, I might get me a cup of CBD coffee. I don't think I can get arrested for that, right? That has had some curiosity for me. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Should this officer be fired for testing positive for marijuana because he's on a prescription medical marijuana, but the policy of the agency says you cannot work here and use prescription medical marijuana? Okay? Two sides to every story. It's not, the agency is just going by their policy. That's their policy. So they're not in the wrong technically by firing this officer. But what I'm trying to get is a little conversation started. Should they ease up on these things? But at the same time, you have to be careful. If you ease up on your policies regarding medical marijuana, are you opening the door for people who really don't need it? They just want to smoke the marijuana. There's pros and cons to everything. You don't need to sugarcoat it. I mean, it's a give and take situation. So if a new policy were to be written, it would really have to have a lot of thought, don't you think? Because we don't want people abusing the prescription of medical marijuana as an excuse to smoke marijuana at parties and everywhere they go, right? It's going to happen. We know that. I mean, we've already busted officers who had marijuana in their vehicles on drug interdictions, in their purses, in their pockets, in their lunch boxes, sneaking it into prison. And when I say that, it's the few bad apples. So it's a very thin line, very thin ice we're walking on. I think the Department of Corrections has that in their policy because it's such a thin line, they just don't want any marijuana use at all. Wanted to throw these things out there. Let me know your thoughts. I kept it short. We get the point, right? I've said enough to get the point across. Let me know what you think about officers using this legally. What do you think about policies that say you cannot use this? Some people have been fired for CBD already, testing positive, but they got their jobs back. So what are we doing here? These cases are setting the precedents for future cases like that. Very curious as what you think. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching Gary York True Prison Stories. Please subscribe.